Mike, the councillor in Netswell ward, what are the day-to-day issues that are coming up in your ward?
At the moment, a number of areas of concern because Netswell is really 50, 60 years on, in bad need of refurbishment. And Harlow Council, through its housing powers, it's got a 2-year programme to try and get in new bathrooms, new kitchens, and some of the estates are actually being very pleasantly transformed. So places like Long Lay being clad, and the external appearance of the place is really being transformed. The small things that the council can do, and since the Labour Council's taken over in the last 2 years, it's actually started to put a lot more money into the housing account for renewals as well as repairs, and even very small things like renewing all the front doors can transform the appearance of an estate and really lift an area. So generally, kind of regeneration. There's a budget at the moment. We've got £20,000 as local councillors to spend, and we've consulted the local community, and we're trying to make sure that there's some more planting in the area, general tidying up, things that are looking a bit tired, things that brickwork that's perhaps broken or cracked that can actually be improved. The Fisher's Hatch, for instance, looking a bit tired, so it can actually be regenerated as a local shopping area.
You mentioned Labour there, so are you
Yes.
saying that perhaps that all this investment in the housing stock wouldn't, or refurbishment wouldn't have happened under a Tory administration?
Oh, absolutely. We've actually brought forward, we've had, Rod Truan is the housing guru, he's the portfolio holder, and he's been instrumental in actually bringing forward these projects for a 2-year period. We carried out the most extensive housing survey to actually assess exactly what the houses, and we've actually hit the ground running on housing. And also, in the next year or so, we will actually be back to a house building programme as well. So, not that many houses to begin with, sadly. There's only be about 10, 12 houses, but we hope to start to develop that programme. In fact, one of the Tories actually said the Tories would never build housing in Hull. There's too much social housing already. And obviously that's not our attitude. We would like to go back to council house building in a big way. Obviously it's a bit bedevilled by the right to buy, but the government as well is actually giving money now to the local authorities to actually encourage them to replace housing. So we're right behind that programme as well.
Other day-to-day issues, when you mentioned your ward,
Yes.
I think of a family lived down in Green Hills, and trying to get down towards, that area, is it Maddox Road? Towards,
Yes.
is the amount of parking, but there's not an awful lot you can do about that, is there?
Parking's probably the biggest issue for local residents. When Freddie Gibbard designed the town, I'm sure you know only too well, is that he designed it with 1 car per 7 households in mind, and sadly Netswell was the recipient of that planning brief. It is, for many, a #1 issue, and it's very limited once again, but there are monies from Essex County Council to try and get some new parking schemes in. As councillors, we are extremely aware of how high up that issue is for local residents, and we're seriously examining new parking schemes, but with the finances being as they are, it's going to be drip, drip, drip. I'm afraid only a few will come online in the near future, but certainly it would be our ambition to go back to what we used to have in the 80s, a new street scheme. So places like Whitewaits, which the centre has actually been completely transformed, and people can park relatively easily in the middle of the estate, simply because that was done, and it's quite a nice scheme in the 1980s. If we can get back to doing those kinds of schemes, then there certainly is a willingness to do that. Whether in fact with the financial pressures we can do that, that's another matter.
You're also on Essex County Council.
Yes, I've just
right?
been elected this May, yes.
Yeah. What is your role there? The three of you there,
Yes.
From Harlow.
Yes.
How do you speak for the people of Harlow over at Chelmsford?
Well, I cover North, so Old Harlow, Markhall and Netswell, but clearly, obviously, I can represent Harlow and if necessary, Essex, but my casework is a very mixed bag. It's from things like flooded roads in Old Harlow, where a major programme now is going to be put in place with a new culvert. And things like social services cases where people perhaps want to bring aged parents to Harlow, and social services talk to social services, and sometimes you need that kind of mediation between people. And then there's the very mundane stuff, but very important to people, is the potholes. And I've kind of got a pothole hotline, and I've had mixed success with that. Some of the potholes I've got sorted out, and some I'm still tearing my hair out over.
Yes, now we know who to send our MOTs to. And you've been a councillor on and off for some time. Has the role of a councillor changed over the years?
Well, when I was 22 when I first went on. As you say, I had gaps between. But it has it in a way, because Harlow Council was far more powerful. It had highways responsibilities, education. When I first went on there, it was actually becoming like a borough. It would actually have the borough powers. And there was local government reorganisation, and it lost quite a lot of those powers. Housing remains as the most important area for Harlow Council. But since the late 80s, when the business rate was taken away from Harlow, Harlow collects £46 million in Harlow in business rates. That money is just taken out of the town, and just £2 million, just over £2 million, is actually given back to Harlow. 20 years ago, we were able to actually levy the business rate and keep a sizable amount of that, and therefore we could actually provide the facilities that people in Harlow wanted. Now, if we raise the council tax, at the most we can raise £150,000 a year, and that simply isn't adequate just to keep ticking over. We're very worried. We've tried to keep the Playhouse afloat, and we've actually guaranteed them a 3-year funding programme. And the same with the leisure centre, the new leisure centre. That has something like about £400,000 a year. But as that time passes, with the government taking so much money away from Harlow Council, it's going to be very, very difficult to provide these basic services that people in Harlow want.
Would there ever be a chance or an opportunity, obviously our sister paper is Thurrock, which is a unitary borough, would there be an opportunity, a chance for Harlow to have, become some form of unitary borough?
Yes, that would be ideal, but I think because of our size, it's 80,000, we're one of the smallest authorities in Essex, so I think it's always argued economies of scale, so perhaps, because you'd have to have a head of education and a head of social services, but I think that is the way forward, doing deals with Harlow Council already does some deals with Broxbourne in regards to sharing the specialised post of an auditor, because it's a very highly paid post, very difficult to get an auditor, but something that's very necessary for local authorities to do. But Harlow, being the size it is, doesn't really need one full time, so we share. So I think there's quite a lot of scope, perhaps, for sharing responsibilities with other authorities as well.
One thing we've learned in almost just a month since we started is that when you go to organisations like the Gibbard Gallery, the Square, we come a bit out of your portfolio here, but Gibbard Gallery and the Square, Harlow Playhouse, there's a real sense of, I guess, a symbiotic relationship there, and they're really proud of what they do and how they're not going to let things die, and that's very typical of Harlow, isn't it?
That's right. Everything, and I was in the Gibbard Garden as well this very weekend. The number of volunteers there. And only a few weeks ago, Canberra held its beer festival there, and the Gibbard Garden itself raised £5,000. Canberra raised a considerable amount of money for its own funds as well, but it really was a nice day out. I'm quite proud in my area, Netswell, there's two things that happen, is that about October, November time, one is obviously Remembrance Sunday in the town park, because we use the Netswell Memorial as our way of actually showing our appreciation for that day, and fireworks, the fireworks in the town park, which I think brings, I don't think I'd be exaggerating saying tens of thousands of people every year to the town park to actually enjoy a free firework display. So I think it is that every so often trying to get the town together. The Playhouse Supporters Club, which has been going for years. Yes, I think it is that.
And finally,
yes,
with all due respect, as a veteran councillor, one thing, when I looked at the list of 33 councillors, somebody looked at it and said, apart from Emma Toll, for Labour, very few young people. Is that a problem?
Yes, it is. If we don't get young people on the authority, yes. The Youth Council, we're putting a lot of emphasis on the Youth Council, and from all parties, the Conservative Party as well. I think the local MP has had his apprentices from either Harlow College, so I think that's very worthwhile, encouraging people. We've actually put more money into the Youth Council this very year because we think it's the seed corn for the democratic process in Harlow that young people get involved. And certainly Emma's certainly a breath of fresh air. She's become a beacon and a champion for youth. That's in the town park. She persuaded me to, part of that £20,000 that I talked about, some of that money will be for new access to the facility, and we've already changed some of the lighting as well, because the lighting used to just go off at 10 o'clock, and now some of the lighting goes off at 10 o'clock, like a wardie, would you? Because the young people, I think, would stay on there till the early hours of the morning. But good luck to them. But so yes, we need a lot more things for young people to do, and to encourage them into the democratic process would be very worth.